Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know you're all busy today. I know time is a valuable commodity, so I want to thank you for spending about 45 minutes with us today. I promise what we're going to share is going to blow your mind, and it's extremely important, and you must address it immediately. Um, I'm urging you to pay attention because there is immediate action required towards the end of this session. All of you need to make to protect your businesses. A few housekeeping items is as we go along, we're going to have Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, concerns, comments, just post them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll get to those as soon as we get to after the demo. So today, what we're going to cover, we're going to cover how OpenRDP is one of the top security threats to your business that antivirus, firewalls, and other protocols just simply can't protect you against. The shocking truth about RDP and how easy it is to find on the open internet, the top ways that hackers use RDP to breach your business. And then we're going to go into, we're going to have Connor do a live hacking demo to just show you how easy it is to exploit and breach your business. The reason this come about for us is because we've been doing cybersecurity assessments for companies, and we're finding more and more companies' information on the internet showing OpenRDP. So we feel it's our duty to give back and educate people on this. So ultimately, we're going to show you how to avoid being a sitting duck to cyber criminals and protect everything you've worked so hard to achieve. Just for joining us today, we're offering you a free bonus. So if you hang around to the end, we'll get to that and the instructions on that. But we're going to do a free dark web scan for your business. We'll get to what dark web is in a little bit. But essentially, if your credentials have been leaked on the dark web, we should be able to find them, and we will be able to give you a full report on that and kind of show you like what exposure you have. It's a $499 value, so stick around for the end for that. So who is Chris Burns and Techie Gurus? So I'm an IT business strategist who's been specializing in developing secure, highly available, and scalable systems for our customers, for enterprises that we've even allowed them to double, triple, or quadruple their business. One of our flagship customers actually was able to go from $10 million to $60 million in roughly 4 years, and they didn't have to make extreme budget constraints and infuse a bunch of cash into the business because we'd done enough at 10 million that we were able to handle all of their IT up through 60. I started Techie Gurus in 2008 to deliver big business technology to a small business world. Today, we've transformed into a premier IT provider of affordable cybersecurity solutions to small and medium businesses. We have some case studies here. One of the reasons we do not show company names is because right now, IT providers like ourselves are threats, or we're under threats by hackers to actually infiltrate us and get to our customers. So we don't want to put our customers' names out on our website because of this. So a lot of times they're going to these big IT companies and they're figuring out who their customers are, and then they're going to attack them so they can try to get to their customers. So we're heavy in manufacturing. As you can see, we have a few case studies here, but we also have a medical case study. We've done work in medicine. We've done work in some finance. We've done work in a bunch of different verticals. Just where we're at, and obviously Metro Detroit, manufacturing is a big deal. So why am I urgently informing all small business owners about this today or now? It's because, like I said before, we've been doing cybersecurity assessments, and we're finding more and more people's information on the internet that I don't think they even know that it exists. They don't know that they have OpenRDP. They don't know that this is even a thing. It could be their provider that their IT provider that they're dealing with today is making bad decisions, and it's going to affect their business. So what is remote desktop, right? RDP is basically a protocol. And by that, it's just a way to see your screen remotely and then send keystrokes and mouse clicks and movement to it. Common use cases are remote administration. So a lot of IT providers use this to remotely administrate servers that are on site. In enterprise, it's used for the same reasoning. It's also used internally. So for like local administration, if you're sitting in the same office, you can just remote into it versus having to go to it, use a keyboard and mouse, hook up a monitor to your server and things like that. And the final use case is really just working from home. A lot of people during the pandemic had to work from home. They had to have a quick way that they could get back into the office and do their work. And remote desktop, what is one of the main ones that was opened up on the internet. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, it looks like you're just logging into your local computer. Just you're doing it from, like I said, your home, on the road, back into your office, things like that. So why is RDP bad? And RDP itself isn't bad, but when it's exposed to the internet, it doesn't have a lot of security built into it. So unless you're doing things like detecting bad account logins, you don't even know you're being attacked. So ransomware is one of the top ones that people are using it right now. They will gain access to your systems and they will encrypt all of your files, and then they're going to ask you for money. It can be Bitcoin, it can be Monero. There's a bunch of cryptocurrencies that people ask for that you have to go out there, and it's a hassle to even get because you have to exchange cash for them. The newer way of doing it is they steal your data first, then they ransom you. So they steal it, they ransom you, and if you don't pay the ransom, they then leak the information on the internet. So to your competitors, to your customers, they expose your business even worse than just a ransomware attack. Government fines for leaking PII. So PII is personally identifiable information. So it's social security numbers, addresses, names, things that can identify a person. So that could be your employees, it could be your contractors, it could be your customers. It could be just trade secrets as well. I mean, it's not really, you're not going to be fined for that, but it's something that can be leaked. So compliancy fines, again, HIPAA, PCI, there's a lot of embarrassment factor to it. If you get ransomed and you can't provide to your customers or you miss orders because of it, you're embarrassed and your customers are going to be very angry with you. Then there's loss of revenue to the business. It could mean your business is gone. With the pandemic, the loss of business that's already happening, if ransomware hits you at this point, it could just be the end of it. And nobody wants to see a business go out of business because of this. We don't. That's why we're here. We're here to try to help businesses protect themselves. So this shows a spike. So this is in early January, the amount of open RDP in the internet in the United States was about 200,000, just north of 200,000. So as you can see, as we get towards the pandemic mode into March, you can see how it keeps going up. It goes up a little bit further. And then suddenly you look at the middle of, or the beginning of April, and it's at 1.4 million. So it almost 7x the number of connections that were just open in the United States. That's the scary part. It's very easy to exploit. And now we have 7 times more people actually using it. And these numbers are only till April. We haven't even seen the numbers till June. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm a small business. Really, how easy is it to find? Well, actually, it's quite easy. There's internet aggregators out there. 2 of them are Shodan and Census. And what they do is they scan the internet constantly. They're looking for IP address information, but then they're scanning those IPs and they're looking for things that are open. So some people will open up their webcams, their security cameras, RDP is open, maybe their web servers, maybe even your ERP system that you use to track everything in your business is open to the internet so people can get to it from anywhere. They will find it and they will report on it. And that's all they do. They just report on it. They don't actually attack. They don't do anything illegal. They report on it. But what attackers can do is they can automate those. They can actually pull that information in and then automate attacks against it. So just because you're small, just because you're in Michigan, you're a small business, you are not anonymous. Quite the opposite, actually. So even look at us. We're on there. This is our IP address. It shows that we're running an Apache server, a Citrix gateway. We leverage Citrix for some internal stuff. It's protected by a certificate, just like a bank would. But again, it's still on the internet. It's still showing like what version of TLS it is. So TLS is just the way that encryption works right now on the internet. But it's also showing that we're vulnerable to an attack. This isn't true. This hasn't been rescanned. We've actually fixed this bug after seeing it, but it's still something that's there today. So let's give a real world example. This is a medical practice in Michigan. And you can see on here, I actually left where it is, Kalamazoo and Battle Creek. So it's in that area. They have obviously multiple medical practices that they do. So a typical provider in the US has 2,500 patients per provider / doctor. They clearly have more. So they probably have 10 doctors at least, probably more. So they probably have more than 10,000 records because, cross records in between. So let's say they have 10,000 records. So this is, they can face fines, but let's look at like what this looks like. This is the actual page that shows what's open. There's even a username and a password. We're not going to use that username and password because that's hacking because we don't have permission to do that. But what we did is we actually did some more research. We actually figured out who their IT provider is. So it's not that hard to find this information and then kind of do some digging to find more information to figure out like where things are, who works at the company, things like that. So This is why it's scary. And this is where it gets worse for them. If they get ransomed, if they get attacked, and they have to report a violation, if they didn't know about OpenRDP, because maybe their IT provider did it, they might get lucky and get off on a $100 fine per record. They have 10,000 records, it's $1 million fine. Almost nobody that gets hit with that is ever $100. Typically, the fine starts at $300. So that's a $3 million fine. If they had reasonable cause to know this, now they're looking at significantly more, probably bankruptcy type numbers. This is real stuff. This is dangerous. So now you're thinking, okay, well, we're in Michigan. How many really are there? This is a live picture of OpenRDP in Michigan. So right now, this shows about 5,700. We're estimating probably about 4,000 something are businesses. So now you're talking about businesses that are just open on the internet to hackers to attack. And most people don't have the detection that they need to even stop it or detect that it's even happening. So they can just sit there and do this for as long as they'd like. Okay, so what is the dark web? So the dark web is basically a separate part of the internet. It's hidden from the typical internet. So you can't get to it in Chrome. You can't get to it in Firefox or Internet Explorer. You can only get to it with a certain browser. And the way that you get to it makes it somewhat anonymous. So cybercriminals believe they're anonymous. So they operate marketplaces where they sell things like social security numbers, credit cards, debit cards, information that they found. In our case, RDP access. It's also estimated that the dark web is actually 550 times bigger than our internet that we use every day. So it's hard for us to even get to the end of the internet that we use today. But now you're talking about something that's up to 550 times bigger. So let's look at a marketplace. So Golden Boy is selling RDP access. So he's selling access to companies. He's saying, okay, cool. I'm going to take credit card, or in this case, not credit card, but Bitcoin, Litecoin, I think Monero is the other one. These are cryptocurrencies that you could trade funds for. It kind of makes them anonymous to take them. So for $10, you can buy an IP address. You want to buy 10 IP addresses? It's going to cost you $100. But he guarantees that at least for one day that they're not going to be blacklisted and they're fresh. So he's guaranteed you can get access to it immediately. And if you don't, guess what? You can look at it, you can post a review, you can ask for a refund, or you can just say, hey, look, he has feedback ratings. And yes, this is the eBay feedback rating system. They completely stole it, they use it. So you can see that in the last 12 months, he's done more than 1,300 transactions, and he's got pretty favorable reviews. You can also see on the next page that the last person was one of the last people that we did in May when we took this, wasn't very happy, but he has plenty of happy customers right before that. This is real. They're selling, again, credit cards, debit cards, social security numbers, access to companies. This is happening every single day. This isn't something that we hide from. If your information has been leaked, it's going to be there. So what happens if you fall victim to an attack? Well, it depends on what happens, right? So you're going to be blamed. So regardless of what happens, you're going to be blamed. There's going to be no sympathy. Your customers aren't going to have sympathy. Your competitors aren't going to have sympathy. You're going to be wrongly labeled, maybe as irresponsible, even stupid, for being attacked. And then you may be questioned, possibly investigated about what you did to prevent this from happening. Because if your customer data is stolen or your employee data is stolen, they're going to want to know what you were doing to protect it. If you don't have an answer, you're opening yourself up for even more liability. Now, if it's bad enough, you may have to notify your clients that you were exposed, that their data was exposed. You may have to notify each employee that, hey, look, your personal information got stolen. If you're a doctor's office, like I said, you may have to actually send out letters to every person that is in your electronic medical records, notifying them that their data has been breached, and now you're facing fines, and now you're going to be forever on the Health and Human Services website that you were breached. So this is real. And then again, your competitors are going to use this against you in sales meetings. They're going to be like, do you really want to do business with the company that got hacked? Who's to say they're even going to be in business in 6 months? So this is the stuff that's real, and this is the stuff that's happening today. And then just even if you survive, the cost of restoring the data and then working to get back up and running to where you were before can be catastrophic to a business. Honda is going through this right now. They had to shut down their entire production in Japan because they got hit with ransomware. And some of the details are a little sketchy on that, but there's actually evidence that somebody was in there for 3 years, and they actually were able to attack their production machines. So the costs that they're going to incur to recover from that, they're going to recover. But they're Honda. Most of us aren't Honda. We can't recover from something like that. So think about that. And then what I want to do right now is I want to turn over to Connor. Connor's going to run through a quick demo with you guys about how the attack can happen, what kind of things that the attacker is looking for, and then we'll come back for questions and answers on anything that you guys have posted. So Connor, you want to? I'll stop sharing and you can take over.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, guys, RDP, it's one of those things where it's a simple mistake, but a simple mistake to have open, but it's just one that you don't want to make due to the consequences. So I'm going to go ahead here and share my screen. Let's see. It is giving me an error right now. It is telling me that the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Hold on, I'll fix it.
Yep. If that's the worst thing that happens, I'd say we did pretty well.
Let's see here. Hold on.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of our efforts here, it comes from a sympathetic perspective where, a lot of people, specifically when COVID hit, they wanted to encourage people to work remotely, and remote desktop was one of the first things that, came to mind as to how to accomplish that thing. So it makes sense why more people are opening up RDP, but it's equally important that we, inform people on the mistake that having RDP open has for you and your company. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Share. Let's make this full screen. Let's do it one more time. And awesome. Sweet. We're good? We're good. So again, my name is Connor. We're going to be walking through the attacker's perspective here. So we're going to cover a couple different things, how they're going to attack your network, and some of the things that they think about when they find out that RDP is open on your network. So one of the first things that we're going to do is using a tool that, like Chris mentioned earlier, such as Shodan or Census. They're going to find out that RDP is open on your network, or at least supposedly it is, and they are going to make sure that it is in fact open. So we're going to go ahead and do that on our test machine over here. And as we can see, we can initiate a remote desktop connection. So from the attacker's perspective, this is fantastic. From you and your company's perspective, this is terrible, because now an attacker is going to try to log in from that screen that we just looked at real briefly. So what is one of the first things that an attacker is going to do? Well, one of the first things before they even start attacking is they're going to research your company heavily. They're going to find out who works at your company, first names, last names, and ideally what your email addresses look like. So if it's like a first name dot last name, first initial last name, whatever that format is incredibly important to an attacker. So we are going to take a look at some of the other tools that they're going to use, which include the main attack methodologies. So there's two different ways that an attacker is going to attack your network, and that's going to be what's called a brute force attack or a dictionary attack. So a brute force attack is where they are going to try to log in remotely using every possible username and every possible password. Extremely inefficient, but if you do not have the proper tools in place and systems in place to detect that you are being attacked, it doesn't matter then, because they have all the time in the world, and that eventually this has the highest rate of success. They will get within your network. It just takes time. So what do some of those lists look like? Well, we are going to take a little look at some of them in just a moment here, and keep in mind. So that was the brute force attack, and a dictionary attack is similar, except instead of generating every single possible combination, so every single possible combination literally being AAAB, AAAC, AAAD, and so on and so forth, but extremely fast. They have something available to them called dictionaries. And before we discuss these dictionaries, which are basically long lists of usernames and passwords, I wanted to, friendly reminder that everything that I'm about to show you is being done at like 1,000 times faster automatically by attackers. They have dedicated machines to performing the exact attack that we are about to do. So I just wanted to keep that in mind because, you know, we're still going to go quite quickly through this, you know, 5-10 minutes, but this is happening thousands of times faster, just all over the internet, because attackers are just looking for a way in. So yeah, dictionaries. We're going to take a look at a list over here of a example dictionary list of usernames. So this is a list from Facebook because I don't know about you, but I am very not creative when it comes to imagining names, and most attackers aren't either. So they'll just pull names that people publicly put out on, you know, Facebook profiles. And this right here is a really, really long list. It's about 500,000 unique names, and as you can see, it is first initial, last name. And for some of you out there, you might be saying, well, hey, that's like, you know, similar to the username that I use to log in. Or maybe at your company, you know, it's first name dot last name, first name dot last initial, whatever it may be. Attackers have these long, long lists for it. And just to prove how long, we are going to just kind of let that run through for a little while. And yeah, it's about 500,000 unique names. And so we have one for usernames, and attackers have access to similar things for passwords. And the thing with passwords is not only are they like common ones that you would anticipate, like password or password 1234, 1234, but a lot of times these are passwords that people have used in the past that have been breached from whatever data breach that they've been, you know, aggregated over the years. And we have one here. Let's see. And keep in mind, these are passwords that people have used in the past. So some of them might be a little bit vulgar. So hopefully we don't run into anything like that. But they are passwords that people have used. And as you can see, this is a list about 6 million unique passwords. And we're going to go ahead and stop that. We could let it run for a little longer, and we're going to clear that out. Just because we don't want anything too nasty to be popping up. And like I mentioned, that's about a list about roughly 6 million passwords that people have used in the past, that attackers know they have used. I'm also, you know, pretty unimaginative with my passwords. So if you have a weak password that's in that list, an attacker's probably going to get in. So we're going to go ahead and see what happens when they have these two utilities available to them, and see if we can get into that computer that we just remote desktoped into just a little while ago. So we're going to type out this command here. And while it's not too important for you to know what's going on exactly and what each of these letters mean, you will see the effect of this command just momentarily after I type this out here. All right, let's give it a go, and it's gonna start flying by pretty fast, but we'll talk about it in just a moment. So as you can see, it's trying every single username from a list that we passed it, and every single password that is in said list, until it eventually finds a hit and successfully logs in. And as we can see here, we have the login of John and this this relatively, you know, wacky looking password here. And for some of you, you might be thinking, well, like, hey, that's like a pretty good password. You know, we got some numbers. You know, it's pretty long. You know, there's no uppercase letters, but it's pretty long. And well, we know it's a bad password for a few reasons. One of the first reasons that we know it's a bad password is, well, one, it's in the list that we had. So somebody used this password in the past. So all attacks going forward, attackers know this is a weak password. Additionally, if you look down at your keyboard and you start at the number 1 key and you kind of work your way down, you'll see that it kind of follows the same pattern all the way to 4. So it's actually not the greatest password, but you know what? So this is like one of those situations where for the attacker, well, we're glad you don't have a good password, but this is, you know, another good reason to have really strong passwords to prevent these kinds of attacks from happening. So we are going to go ahead and connect and see if we can use those credentials that we just had. Remember, it was a username of John and then the 1 down password. So we will give that a try here. All right, starting at 1, working our way down. All right, and we're getting a welcome here. So at this point, from an attacker's perspective, fantastic. We are in the computer, and there is a host of things that we can do at this point. But from you and your company's perspective, this is terrible. You have a threat actor that just made it into your network and has access to whoever, to whatever this particular user has. And so attacker gets in. What are the first things that they're looking at? Well, before they even start looking, they're going to wait until a Friday night, maybe a holiday weekend, or just the weekend in general where no one's in the office. And that's when they're going to do what we just did and actually log in. They could have the attack running for weeks in the background trying to get the valid username and password. And if you don't have the right systems in place, you'd never know. But for this actual login, they're going to try to make sure, do it like an after hours thing. And they'll be browsing around. They'll be saying like, hey, we got an invoice here, some resume, QuickBooks information, some personal files, whatever this user has access to. I want to find out what my permissions are. So I'm going to type this out here. And it says that the members of the administrator group are John. So that means I have administrative access to this computer, which is not good. From the attacker perspective, fantastic. I have access to everything. I am the administrator. But from your business, this is terrible. So one of the other things that you might be thinking, you're like, okay, well, what happens in the event that John's password changes, or maybe we anticipate this happening? Because more than likely, if you don't have the proper systems in place, you're not going to know this is going on. So somebody could be in here for weeks, for months, or even for years, and you'd have no idea. And some of the attacker techniques only get more and more complicated as time goes on. So one of the things that an attacker is going to do when they first get into a machine, and we did things a little out of order, but no worries. I'm an attacker. It's Friday night. I got all the time in the world. We are going to type out a lengthy command here. You don't necessarily need to know what this command does, but you will see the effects of it. So just bear with me here. Basically, what this is going to be doing is giving the attacker what's called a backdoor. So a backdoor is basically a way for an attacker to consistently get back into your network, no matter what you do to try to kick them out. So for example, let's say we got in as the user John. So what if John stops working at the company and maybe you delete their account, or disable his account? Maybe John has to change his password, or maybe, just maybe, you suspect that somebody is trying to get here. I don't want to type anything wrong here. Trying to get into your network, which is not a good thing. We don't want people in our network, but changing passwords every now can be a good thing. Well, the attacker's going to say, hey, right when I get in the first time, I'm going to make sure I can always get in. So we're going to type that in. We're going to say yes. Okay, we're going to make that change. So we are going to go ahead and disconnect now. We installed our backdoor, or at least a method for getting persistent access, and we are going to disconnect here. And we are going to do that same assumption that we just had, where maybe John's password has changed, or John's account doesn't exist anymore, right? So our once way to get into the network is now gone. Well, due to that change that we just made, maybe, assuming I didn't miss to type anything, and it works, because we're kind of cruising through here. So maybe I might have made a typo, but attackers, they got all the time in the world. They got Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, before they have to worry about anything. So over here, that change that we made, that long command that we typed in the blue PowerShell prompt, we made a little change to some of the accessibility options over here. So over here on the right side, we have a utility called Magnifier. Now, normally this it does, well, as you would assume, and it just zooms in and helps you read. But this change that we made earlier, you're going to see that we actually get quite the different result. It just takes a little while to pop up on our end. But again, we're the attacker. We have the whole weekend. We have time is not really a problem right now. We probably already spent the hardest amount of time trying to get into the network, but we're in now. So we'll see what kind of changes we can make. And as you can see, we did not zoom in, but instead we have a brand new command prompt. So again, from the attacker's perspective, this is fantastic. And we just struck the lottery. This is great. But this is where you and your company really, is really about to start hurting, because as we mentioned, we said, hey, John no longer works for the company. His account's gone. Well, as the attacker, I say, okay, I don't really care. I'll just make my own account. So we are going to go ahead and add that. And something else I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead whoops, I'm going to go ahead and make myself an administrator as well, because I'm the attacker and I would love administrative privileges. So we are going to go ahead and do that. Nice, typed everything right. And we are going to go ahead and try to log in with that brand new account that we just made. Okay, and do one of these. Let's see, we're getting a welcome screen. Let's see. It's going to take a little while because we just made this account, so it's doing an initial account setup. But again, one of the things that I really want to hammer home is if you don't have the infrastructure, or you don't have the tools or the knowledgeable staff in place to identify an attack like this, it's game over. Really, you don't stand a chance. And this is something that we just did at a real simplistic level. But like I mentioned earlier, there's machines that are just scouring the internet for open RDP, just waiting to get something that they can get into. And that initial connection that we made at the very beginning of this presentation, something like that might get started. And then maybe it tries a dictionary attack or a brute force attack, and then once it gets credentials, it gets passed over to a hacker to perform a more sophisticated attack. And we only discussed some of the bad things that could happen in regards to okay, well, now they can see my data. But not only can they see your data, but now they can traverse through your network. Here we go. We're just going to accept these default. Encrypt everything that, well, first they will steal the information on your computer, then they will encrypt everything and force you to buy back the encryption keys to decrypt the information at risk of leaking potentially really sensitive information to the public. So as you can see, we logged in with this brand new account that we just made, which is, again, terrible for you and your company, absolutely terrible. But the attacker is quite happy right now because we have an administrator account that has persistent access, and we can do a whole bunch more nasty things from here. We're now, we can even extend outside of just the immediate company, and we can start attacking your emails. Since we're in the system, in the computer, we can install something called a keylogger, where everything that you type gets sent back to us. So if you ever logged into your email, or if you typed in a password to a particular account, the attacker has that. The possibilities really are endless, and this is kind of like a doomsday scenario. You really would not want this to happen. So one of the main things that I before I hand it back over to Chris is, RDP open like this is not a matter of if you are going to get attacked, but a matter of when. So with that, with that somber note, I'm going to pass it over to Chris. Here, let me stop sharing my screen here, buddy.
Yeah.
And then pass this over to you again. There you go.
All right. Thanks, Connor. Thanks for everything. That was awesome. As Connor was saying, one of the things that people need to understand too is as those attacks happen, you need detection in the background. Connor said that if you can't detect something is happening, you don't know what's happening. So these attacks are happening thousands of times a second. So with that, we want to get to some questions. So, Jenna, what kind of questions do we have?
So one question that we have is, how do I know if I have open RDP in my business?
Okay, so that's a good starting point. So what we can do is we can have a simple conversation with you. We can walk you through some steps to get your IP addresses, and then we can actually go look it up for you. So we can look it up and then actually tell you. And if we get permission from you, we can actually do scanning for you to tell you what's exactly open on your network.
Okay, and then that leads me to the next question we have, which is, how quickly can we find out if we have it open?
Normally, if you just schedule a 15-minute call with us, we can kind of go through this really quickly. I mean, we're talking same day or next day. It really depends on the availability. So we kind of urge you to do it as soon as possible. So if you think that you have this open, definitely engage with us. We can at least help you from that perspective.
Okay, awesome. Also, one last question. What protections can we have in place to protect ourselves from this happening, or are there steps we could take in order?
Okay. Easiest way is to not use RDP as your main connection. We have solutions for our customers that securely allow them to do remote access. RDP itself internally, like I said, isn't bad. It's just when it's on the internet, it's just open for people to attack. There's not very many security functions built into it. So what we would do is we would come in and we would probably provide you with a different way of remote accessing your computers that isn't RDP, that's done over like an SSL or a TLS or an SSL connection, kind of like how you connect to your bank, right? You go to HTTPS, I don't know, chase.com, you see the little lock up there in the corner. That's the kind of stuff that we provide that you can access your network from. So it provides a level of security that aren't susceptible to brute force. Plus, there's something we can do with multi-factor authentication where you have a token as well, which that's a deeper conversation to have.
Awesome.
Any other questions, or is that pretty much it?
That's all for me.
Okay,
All I
awesome.
have, so.
All right, thanks. Okay, so how do we protect ourselves? We kind of just covered that a little bit. First thing is you need to know whether you have RDP open. If you do have it open, you need to, one, close it immediately, but then also have a plan. So if somebody needs remote access into your network, whether it's your IT provider, whether it's somebody that maybe is a software provider that needs to help you, there are just more secure ways to actually access it than RDP. And that's where you need to engage with like an IT provider or a vendor or something like that can help you with that. And that's kind of what we're here for. So one is knowing, and then two is taking steps to kind of taking care of that. So for us, one of the steps too is how much of your information is out there. So what we've done is, because you're on the webinar or because you've engaged with the webinar, what we want to do is offer you a free dark web scan. And what that is we're going to go out there, we're going to take your email domain. So if it's acme.com or whatever, in our case, techygurus.com, we'll run it through our dark web scanning. We're going to pull off all the information and we're going to give you a free report. This report's worth about $500. We typically do this monthly for our customers, but we're going to offer this as a one-time report just to see what kind of data you have out there. Hopefully you don't have very much. Hopefully your employees are well trained and aren't putting their information out there, or haven't signed up for sketchy websites, or in general haven't been exposed by some sort of website. So what it'll show you is it'll show you an email addresses that have been exposed, and it'll also show you a partial password. It won't show you the full password. So if you go to an employee and you show them the partial password, they're going to know immediately whether that's their password or not. And hopefully, if it is, it's one that's been changed. And if it's a current one, then obviously you want to change it right away. So with that, what you want to do is you want to send an email to info@techygurus.com, put in the subject line of RDP and your contact information, and we'll get back to you. If you have any questions after watching this and you don't feel it was answered during the webinar, please just do the same thing. Put RDP in there, put your information, and then put your question, and we'll get back to you and answer you accordingly. So out of respect to time, that's what we have for today. For next week, we're actually going to cover phishing. We're going to show a live phishing attack. Phishing is when somebody tries to trick you via email into doing something, clicking on a link. We're going to show you a live phishing attack and what that is. So that's a preview for next week. So I want to thank you for your time, for attending this webinar with us. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. And we look forward to seeing you next week.